and drawing services are available. Come by and see our displays for yourself at the Floors of the Villages, 3935 County Road 216 in Oxford, or Exquisite Design Kitchen and Bath in Bellevue, right across the street from the Bellevue Library. So whether you're looking for bookcases, kitchen, bath, or outdoor kitchen, Cabinet Sales of North Florida is your one-stop source of quality cabinets. For a free estimate, call 352-427-2647. That's 352-427-2647. Cabinet Sales of North Florida.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this nice-looking Monday morning. If you've ever done anything that required a lot of practice and then stopped doing it, and then decided to do it again, like a musical instrument, for example, you have to practice again to get back to where you were. It doesn't last with you forever, right? Unless it's riding a bike, but then even you might need practice, right?
Yeah.
Doctors call what they do practice, right? I'm in the medical practice, right? And we've had many jokes about that word practice. But obviously, if you're a doctor and you've not been a doctor for a while, then the practice is going to be necessary for you to continue to practice. I guess that makes sense. There's a couple of advertisements that are on the air right now for some of the schools here in Ocala that are expressing the fact that there's a shortage of nurses. I had never heard that there was a shortage of doctors, or at least there was is expected to be one. According to the notes that were sent to me for this interview, the Association of Medical Colleges states that the U.S. will face a shortage of more than 90,000 physicians by the year 2020. That's a lot of doctors. And so there may be one answer to what we can do about that, and that's the answer that our guest is going to present to us. Dr. David Bazzo is on the phone. He's the Chief Medical Officer and the Clinical Professor of Family Medicine at University of California in San Diego School of Medicine. And wow, is he in California? Did he get up early to be with us?
I think so.
Let's find out. Dr. David Bazzo. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Robin. And it's not too early. It's a little bit overcast, but it's still pretty regular time here.
Okay, so it's 8 o'clock in the morning?
It's 8 in the morning, yes, sir.
Wow. Well, good. Thank you for getting up early to be with us. I'm guessing you did other interviews before ours. We hear all the time about the nurse shortage, but I don't think I've ever heard about a physician shortage. Why are we having that? Why is that?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first, I think, has to do with the aging population of the United States. As you know, and I'm sure you've heard, the baby boomer population is very rapidly approaching retirement. In fact, the front end of the baby boomer population is already beginning to retire. And we know that, unfortunately, as people age, they do require additional medical services, hence more office visits. And at this point in time, there's about 800,000 physicians in the United States that are practicing, and we still have not been able to meet the capacity of patients at this time. So if people are going to be aging and using more office visits, we're going to need more doctors to help take care of those patients. And
am I on the right track? Are the retired doctors being recruited to come back?
That's one of the groups that we're actually looking at. Yes, some physicians who had retired and, frankly, were enjoying their retirement. But as a physician, you're pretty busy, and you will hear many times from doctors that physician is not just a job; it's kind of a calling, and it gets into your blood. And what we have found is a number of the doctors started retirement and, frankly, got bored. They were tired. There's only so many times you can go out and play golf, and they missed helping people. They missed kind of their life's calling, and some of them wanted to return to practice to be able to contribute further.
So are we in an ideal situation living in Florida? Because a lot of those doctors who practiced up north moved here.
That's true. You do have a lot of physicians who have, were practicing in some other places, some colder climates, and you said, "Hey, it's time to retire. I'm moving down to Florida," and they're probably sitting around there and looking for something to do.
Now, this is kind of maybe a crazy question, but if Robin and I decided to quit radio, let's say 10 years ago, and then come back now, we would have come into a whole different world because technology has changed so much. I'm guessing that's true for every profession, and I'm guessing medical profession is no different. So would there be a learning curve when they first came back?
Absolutely. And in fact, I would say that medical profession probably highlights that things because, as time goes on and more money goes into research, we are just seeing a boom in new kind of treatments that are available. You've heard of new medications coming out every day to help different maladies. There's, with the advent of sequencing the genome and learning more about genetics and their interplay into treatment, there's a lot of learning. And in fact, when a doctor graduates from medical school and then ultimately does their residency training program, what we try to instill in our students is that they become lifelong learners. Even if you're a practicing physician, you are required by almost every single state to get a minimum number of continuing educational credits per year, and that varies somewhere between 25 and 50 hours. For some people, they get as many as 100 or 150 hours or credits, if you will, of training every year just to maintain practice. So folks that have been away for a while and are then coming back in need to catch up and relearn some things and learn some new things.
If there are doctors that are graduating from medical school and they want to be emergency doctors for the emergency room or trauma centers, and then the other doctors that used to do trauma are retired and want to come back, will they be given first choice as to their place of employment, or will the students coming out of medical school be given the first choice?
Yeah, generally, it's. I don't know if I could answer that question specifically, but the students that are just coming out, tend to come in a little fresher. And when you're talking specifically about emergency room, it's a pretty fast-paced, high-energy type of thing. And maybe as physicians age, they may not want to go back into that area, which is why we're actually focused on retraining primary care physicians. We're looking at doctors who are in offices who are seeing patients with chronic conditions or, maybe acute conditions that don't rise to the level of needing to go to the emergency department. So the pace is not what you would see, or the acuity would be not what you would see in the emergency department. But, practicing primary care medicine is very different because, you are seeing patients with chronic conditions like diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, heart failure, and you're seeing them over time and trying to keep them healthy, as opposed to like a broken bone or some kind of wound that needs to be fixed, and then the patient moves on.
So take us on a little tour, if you would, with words. Maybe there's a story that's already happened. How did the doctor who came to get back into practice, how did he make the decision, or he or she, could be a she? How did that doctor approach the schooling that was necessary? How did they approach the office that they would eventually work for? Kind of give us a little. Is there a real example you can tell us about?
Absolutely. We've had a number of participants come through. We are a relatively new program, and we have about 30 participants to date. But I can give you an example of even our first person who graduated went through. He was practicing internal medicine, but about 19 or 20 years ago, he went into being basically an executive, a physician executive. And after being a physician, a successful executive, helping to run a medical group, he decided that he wanted to return to practice. And obviously, he had not been practicing for about 19 years, and he needed to come back and get retrained. So he came back, went through our program, and I can describe that to you later if you'd wish. And he then completed the program and secured a job at in Central California at UC Davis Medical Center, initially as a locum tenens, kind of filling in for doctors as they were on vacation or taking a little bit of leave. But then he, after 3 months of doing that, he went on to secure a full-time position in a rural federally qualified health center in Placer County. And so it was really a nice story because he went to a place of significant need. The rural areas throughout the United States have high need for physicians. There aren't enough doctors out there, and so he was able to go and secure a position in an area that really needed a doctor.
Are there grants or scholarships available for the doctors that are coming out of retirement that they're going into a new type of field?
Yeah, at this time, we don't personally have any grants or scholarships available. What I could imagine is if there is a location that is in need of a physician, that they might help support the funding for the program for a particular doctor. But I at this point in time, because the program's pretty new, we haven't gotten to the point of having grants available.
Now, are the programs that you're talking about all in San Diego, or are they scattered throughout the country?
Well, we have physicians from many different states. I think we have about 8 different states: Arizona, California, Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, Texas, and Washington. We haven't had any Florida physicians yet, so we're still waiting. But the way the program works is the majority of the education is done online at the physician's own pace.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And so there is a practical module that right now is being done at the end of the program in San Diego, where the physician, once they have completed all of the educational models, we bring them here to San Diego and we put them through a standardized patient evaluation, which is where they will work with a patient who is an actor, who is portraying specific cases, and we test the doctor to see how they do with their communication skills, their diagnostic skills, their therapeutic skills, and just to give them a final seal of approval that we feel that they're competent to get out into practice.
Will some of the doctors be set up in practices where there's just a physician's assistant so they can share their expertise?
It varies. The doctors are going to go into any number of different practice settings. Some of them may be working with physician assistants. Some of them may not be. Generally, what happens is and each state is a little bit different how physician assistants are handled, but for the most part, physician assistants do practice under the license of the physician they are working with. So it would be that some of our physicians will be fully licensed to practice in each and every state that they want to apply for. But if they decide to hire a physician assistant, or there's a practice situation where a PA is working with them, then that would they'd be able to do that as well.
Good news.
I had a funny thought when you were talking about the actor who plays the part of a patient. In music, because Rob and I do music, if you're trying to bolster your resume to make it look like you've done more than you actually have done, like you'll say, like, where have you played? You'll say, well, I played at, the basement. I played in the basement. And it looks like that's the name of a bar.
Yeah, right.
So here's I can picture the actor. What have you appeared in? Well, I played Freddie the sick man.
Yeah.
In the retraining of Dr. Smith.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the science of standardized patient, and I call it a science because it's something that's developed to the point that every single graduate of every United States medical school has to pass a standardized patient examination before they qualify for their license now. It is part of the licensing examination, and so this is something that has gotten to the point where it's actually quite sophisticated, and it really gives you a little flavor of what the physician is going to be like in practice.
Well, you're actually hitting a really great market for this. I just happen to know, that we have a number of retired physicians in our own community.
Yeah.
They from all walks of life and from all over the country. We are really the funneling part. The country is funneled down to here. People retire here, right here. Not just Florida, but here in Ocala, we've got a load of them. So, okay, so that person who's listening, who says, you know what, this is maybe something I could do. Obviously there's going to be a website, and you said earlier that you could give a thumbnail sketch of what the experience is like. Maybe that person listening wants to hear that, and I'd like to hear it too.
Yeah, well, primary care medicine is a very broad category. I mean, as a primary care physician, we basically see everything that walks through our doors. I mean, it could be an acute issue, but it, in many likelihood, could be a chronic issue. So if you can imagine every single problem, from a dermatologic problem to a cardiology problem to a kidney problem to a bladder problem to a arthritis problem to a headache to any other neurologic problem, that's going to be coming in to a primary care physician's office. So the education is very broad, and essentially what we have done is try to encapsulate the knowledge of primary care physician into about 15 different modules. And each of these modules are based on a different organ or side of the body or area of medicine. And each of the modules can take anywhere from 6 hours up to 12 or 15 hours to go through. And what we do is we have a very guided section where the physician takes a pretest to gain and sort of assess their knowledge at the beginning.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
Yeah, so they take a pretest, they sort of get an idea of where they are with that topic, then they go through the entire educational model, and again, it's at their own rate. There's a significant amount of reading that takes place, and then afterwards, after completing that module, they will do a post-test, and again, they need to reach a certain score level on the post-test in order to pass that module and assure that they've gained the information that we need them to on that particular topic. So they go through 15 different modules, and the modules also include things like, brushing up on your skills for history and physical examination. They also brush up on some technical issues like how to do proper medical record keeping. So it really covers the full gamut of practice. And that takes, once they complete that, they get 180 credits of continuing education. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that, a minimum is 25 to 50 hours per doctor per year. This gives them 180 credits in one setting.
Wow.
All right. You yourself going to be a professor to regroup these retired physicians back into the working place?
Well, actually, yes, I'm already currently a professor at UCSD, so I teach medical students, I teach residents, I teach practicing physicians. In fact, I'm involved with a program that assesses doctors who have had some difficulty in practice as well, and what we try to do is to test them, and then we attempt to remediate them. But so I'm involved in teaching at all levels, and this is just as the medical director of PRR, myself and my colleagues from UCSD, who are all in the School of Medicine and have professor titles here at the School of Medicine, have all been involved in putting this education together.
Okay, so it sounds like, and maybe I'm just dense and didn't get this part, but it sounds like in order for a doctor to continue to be a licensed physician, he has to go through a test every year, once a year?
It's not a test. It's just that they have to attest to the fact. They have to, state to the medical board of whatever state they are that they have done so many hours of continuing education in a medical field. Correct.
So anybody who's been retired over a year already needs to do something else in order to get back on track.
Yeah, they do. And actually, it's interesting because many retired physicians do like to continue their learning, and many of them, even though they're not practicing, do continue their medical education. In fact, we just had a family medicine conference here in San Diego, and we had about 350 doctors participate, and we looked at the statistics just yesterday, and about 10% of the physicians that attended the conference were retired.
Some physicians have told us that because of the passage of Obamacare, that has limited their ability to do pro bono. Have you found that out?
I haven't had that experience. In fact, with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, when we were talking earlier about the need for primary care physicians, there's about 30 million or so people that have that did not have insurance previously that in the United States that will be able to get insurance. And once these people have insurance, they'll need doctors as well. What you will find is that there is a shortage, and so these people are having trouble, which is why another reason we help bring the program about. But with regards to being able to provide pro bono care, one of our physicians is actually coming through the program because that's what they want to do. They want to be able to and this is a doctor who was a neurosurgeon, and he's a retired neurosurgeon. But what he wants to do is come back to work on a part-time basis, but just deliver free care at a clinic on a voluntary basis. Yeah, so I mean, it's really heartwarming to hear these kind of stories.
Wow. 90,000 physicians will be needed by 2020, and then 130,000 by 2025, according to the notes that were provided to me. I don't know this off the top of my head. But I'm wondering if that's going to attract physicians who are not American, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, is that a possibility, and has it already surfaced? Have you had some foreign doctors who said, you know what, I'm moving to America, they've got some openings?
Yeah.
Well, that's already happened, as you state, and in fact what happens is there is a pathway for physicians who have gone to medical school in another country, and again, the different medical boards from the different states have different criteria of which medical schools they'll accept degrees from and which they don't. But what happens is these physicians have to go through and take the same type of pre-licensing tests that the U.S. doctors have to take, and then they apply to go into a residency training program, and then they can finish up their licensing and then go into practice. Now, what the PRR program is not is if there's a doctor who was practicing in another country and they wanted to come to practice here in the U.S., the PRR is not a pathway for them to come and begin practice in the U.S. They must go through the regular pathway that the licensing boards have all accepted, which is taking the tests, going in to get residency training for a number of years, and then they're allowed out into practice.
So I'm guessing that your appearance on the radio today is to reach out to those doctors that might be interested in what you're talking about.
Absolutely. It's just to really kind of get the word out. If there's physicians out there that have trained in any specialty, really, and feel that they want to go back, they want to contribute, either they want to get a job, or if they want to volunteer in a free clinic capacity, they want to get retrained and be able to deliver good care in the primary care specialty. It's considered a different branch of medicine, perhaps, from what they had practiced in. And, as with anything, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's requisite knowledge that you need to be able to do a good job, and you need to come back and refresh, and we're the place to be able to do that.
And they could be a good mentor for the young doctors that are just graduating out of college.
Absolutely. There's nothing that can replace experience when approaching a patient, and if they're able to mentor and to help new physicians in practice, I think that's just an added bonus.
If you're just tuning in, Dr. David Bazzo is our guest. He's out in California. Are you in San Diego?
I am indeed.
He's the Chief Medical Officer and the Clinical Professor of Family Medicine at the University of California in San Diego School of Medicine. And the gist of what we've been talking about is to recruit doctors who've retired who might want to get back into practice. Mm-hmm. And there's a program that Dr. Bazzo is telling us about called the Physician Retraining and Reentry Program. PRR was the way that Dr. Bazzo abbreviated it earlier. And obviously in the next 2 minutes, we don't have time to say it all again, but I'm trusting that there's a website we can send our listeners to. What is that?
Yeah, it's the PRR website, and I think the easiest way is to just do a search, Physician Retraining and Reentry, and it'll get you right to our website. And you can even put in PRR, but that'll give a number of different responses. So if you put in Physician Retraining and Reentry, it'll get you right to that website. And
can you just tell us what the actual website address is, just so that we have it on the record?
I believe it's PRR or physicianreentry.org, but I have to check that. I'm sorry. I have to say that I don't have it right off the top of my head, which is kind of embarrassing.
Okay. But, PRR
program.com.
Physician Retraining and Reentry.
Okay. All right. Oh, I found it. Robin has it.
Oh, great.
It's PRRprogram.com.
There we go. Thank you so much.
Physician Retraining and Reentry. So there you go.
This is really wonderful what you are doing, Doctor, because you've got such an open mind for the needs of others that you are just welcoming everybody into the workforce.
We're trying to help people get back. Again, with the need that's coming up, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. There are new medical schools that are starting, but you figure that as a person comes into medical school, they have 4 years of medical school, then at least 3 years of residency training. So it's going to take a minimum of 7 years to produce a brand new doctor. If we take a doctor who's already in practice, we put them through the PRR program, they're ready to go.
I just found your picture. You're a young man. Wow.
Well, I'm not that young.
I'm getting old. That's what it is.
I picture young.
This is like when I get pulled over. Are you old enough to be a policeman? Doctor,
say that I'm over the 50 mark.
Oh, really? Wow. You must know something about medicine. Dr. Bazzo, thank you for being on with us today. For the listeners, the website is prrprogram.com. We have run out of time, but thank you so much for the great information, Doctor.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Really good. All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be right back. This is WOCA Ocala.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. The Supreme Court rules in the Hobby Lobby case. Employers are not required to cover employees' contraception costs and company health plans.
Basically, in plain terms, it makes it clear that Congress did not discriminate in this way against men and women who wish to run their businesses.